A Chinese view of China with influencer KennyWow. Hey everyone, I'm Jason Smith, originally from sunny California, now living in beautiful Beijing. Today's guest is a Chinese influencer with over 45,000 followers on TikTok at Real KennyWow and 20,000 followers on RedNote at KennyWow. Welcome back to the bridge, Kenny.
Thank you, Jason, for inviting me back. Very excited to be here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to get your perspective on things. We're approaching Chinese New Year, also called Lunar New Year, celebrated throughout Asia and really by the diaspora of Chinese communities all over the world, including where I'm from, San Francisco. So I was hoping to get your insights as someone born and raised in China about Chinese New Year, about how it's celebrated. Could you tell us a little bit about what is Chinese New Year?
So Chinese New Year is this biggest holiday in China, and yes, it is coming up. And this is a time of the year where everyone in this family will gather together and have a big family reunion involving dinners, visiting relatives and all that. Besides, we also have quite unique and interesting traditions like, wearing red because red means energy, vitality, welcoming the New Year's coming, and also, putting up the couplets, watching Spring Gala. It's a national TV program. People watch together, set off firecrackers, fireworks. Really, the holiday vibe. It's really fun. In my opinion, it's the best holiday among all here in China.
In America, we don't have any holidays that last 15 days. So for me, this is also unusual coming to China and finding that there's this really long 2 week long celebration. Christmas in the United States, our biggest holiday, is 2 days. Christmas Eve, Christmas, done. So could you tell us a little bit about when do people come together? What is the first day like? What happens over 15 days?
Sure. So usually here, the official, though the unofficial start is 7 or 8 days even before the Chinese New Year. So I guess more accurately, people celebrate this holiday for the entire 3 weeks, right? So people usually start to prepare for the food several days before the Chinese New Year Eve, because during the Chinese New Year, the grocery store will be closed. Those people also need to go back, celebrate this great vacation with their own family members. And then from the Chinese New Year's Eve, like all the way to the 15th, is considered the official Chinese New Year. And obviously, just to make it clear for the audience who might be a little bit curious, like, do Chinese people really have 3 weeks vacation? No, this year we actually have 9 days vacation, right? But for students, for example, they can enjoy the whole 3 weeks. But for people who have a full-time job, they usually go back hometown maybe like 2 or 3 days before the Chinese New Year's Eve, and then celebrate all the way into the first week, and then they will go back to work. However, it's still part of the Chinese New Year, and they continue to celebrate no matter where they are until the 15th of the Lunar New Year, January.
One thing I noticed about going back to my wife, who's Chinese, her hometown is they eat a lot of dumplings. And what they do is they actually put coins in one or two of the dumplings. And if you find one of the dumplings that has a coin in it, you get good luck. Could you tell us a little bit about the kind of food that you ate growing up at Chinese New Year at, your grandpa's house or grandma's house?
Yeah, absolutely. In my family, we also have this tradition of putting coins instead of the dumplings. And I think, generally speaking, in northern China or China overall, people eat dumplings because, dumplings, you sort of wrap the meat inside and wrap it up. So it's a form of reunion already, right? So people eat dumplings usually like on the Chinese New Year's Eve when everybody is just chatting with each other, playing the New Year's gala in the background, eating delicious Chinese food, and whoever, just have the dumpling with a coin inside in their bowl. And when they find it, they are the lucky person of the night, and they usually will say several wishful sentences to the entire group. And when it comes to food, because my grandparents living on both sides, they actually live in different places. One live in the city and the other side live in the village. For the one living in the city, um, we just have a lot of different Chinese dishes like braised pork and braised fish on the table. Whereas in my grandparents on my mom's side in the village, it's crazy because that's the village style of celebration. They literally put a lot of vegetables and meats all together in one gigantic wok. Like that wok is, I think, more than 1 meters long in
Wow.
diameter. And yeah, like everyone would just be eating from the wok. It's crazy.
Wow, that sounds really exciting. When you could you tell us about when you're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, when you're a child and you're absorbing this holiday, because I think a lot of holidays end up being about children and making it exciting for them. What stands out to you about this holiday?
For me, especially when I was a child, the thing that stood out is definitely red pockets. Over here, as a kid in China, well, I'm no longer a kid, so I'll, I guess, mention about this a little bit later. But when I was a kid, at least, I was able to receive a lot of red envelopes from all my relatives. My aunties, uncles, cousins' parents, my grandparents on both sides, my parents. And whenever we go to their families, or even just going to my grandparents' family, and whenever I see those people, my relatives, they always give me red envelopes, and I gotta keep the money to myself, even as a kid. So back then, I always thought I'm the rich man, because I got all the monies floating just into my pockets without actually working for it, or maybe only saying wishful statements to them. So that is definitely the
Mm.
best memory celebrating Chinese New Year as a kid here in China.
What do you mean you said wishful things? So when they give you money, you say, "Oh, I wish you very good luck, Uncle," something like that?
Yeah, I think maybe this sentence some of you guys may have heard is um, 恭喜发财, or in Cantonese it
Mm.
will be 恭喜发财, right? Which means hope you get rich, because Chinese people
Mm.
just really love money, and we even have this money god, and that's what usually people say to each other. And of course, Happy Chinese New Year and all that. But this I hope you to get rich is the most common one wishful sentences out there.
I'm going to practice that so I can say it more often this Chinese New Year to people. So, a lot of people wear, especially during Chinese New Year, a lot of red and red socks specifically. Sometimes the red socks have a little man on the bottom of the red socks. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, so red socks or red in general means luck and is supposed to bring prosperity to the people wearing it. And during Chinese New Year, because we want to welcome the new year and hope we also have good luck in the coming year. Therefore, people generally wear red. But when it comes to red socks or even red underwear specifically, that's usually the people who are celebrating this year during their zodiac year, because everybody was born in a specific year and each year has a zodiac animal attached to it. So every 12 years, that's an entire cycle. And so when you're at age 12, 24, 36, that will be your zodiac year. And based on the Chinese astrology, people rebirth basically this year. And that's when you're the most vulnerable. Therefore, you
Mm.
might need some extra luck to actually get over the challenges in this year. And because red, like I said, is meant to bring us luck and energy, therefore we wear red to hopefully have a smoother year ahead.
Wow, that's really interesting. You're an adult now, so I'm imagining, firstly, you don't get hongbao or the red envelopes anymore. But also, I'd be curious, how has Chinese New Year not only just changed for you, but how has it changed from a couple of decades ago to 2026?
For sure, for sure. So you're mentioning about Hongbao or red envelopes. That is definitely one of the biggest changes among all, which is when I was a kid, or maybe 5, 10 years ago in China, people hand out actual paper red envelopes with cash in it. So you can actually feel the money, and that got people excited. However, now, as you guys perhaps know already, China is this very tech savvy country. Everything goes somewhat technical. And over here, people start to send red envelopes via WeChat, which is our communication app. And it just has this feature of transferring money in the form of red envelope. So you don't actually need to go and see that person because in many cases, maybe during Chinese New Year, this person is, say, working overseas or for some reason couldn't come back home. They are still being able to send the red envelope to their relatives, to the kids of their relatives. The wishes are always there. So we receive money electronically now. And another thing I would like to bring up is I remember when I was a kid, or maybe 10 years ago, I just go around play with firecrackers, fireworks, and it's very common. And then later on, because it's fire, combustion, there might be a danger to it. Therefore, we have more restrictive areas to play the fireworks and maybe even at designated hours. So that's another big change. Also, New Year's Gala. New Year Gala is this nationwide program that lasts 4 or 5 hours long during the Chinese New Year's Eve, and people would just watch the programs. Best actors, actresses giving performance to every single Chinese staying in the comfort of their home, watching TV. However, now everybody's on their phone, even watching Chinese New Year Gala on their phone, exchanging wishful sentences, greetings to each other, no matter where they are. So that's another big change.
For the Chinese gala, let's talk about that for a moment. I find it really fascinating because it's about 2 billion people, because everyone in China plus a lot of people around the world are also watching this gigantic television performance, the largest TV event of the year every year in the world. What I notice personally as a foreigner in China is that a lot of Chinese people unify around the themes that happen. So the same jokes or the same songs, wherever you are in the Chinese community, you can talk about what you saw in the gala. How is that the gala affected you as a child and as an adult and as a member of the Chinese community?
I think being part of the Chinese community every year watching the New Year's Gala is a must because it goes 4 or 5 hours long. So sometimes we don't watch the entire thing, would rather watch the highlights, or maybe my parents are watching them, and when there's something interesting popping up, they would just let me know, and I rush to the TV and start watching TV together with them. And yeah, like you said, because so many people watch New Year's Gala, and during the Chinese New Year, you'll be meeting all your friends, families, and this will be a very common topic. We'll be talking about, hey, that skit last night during the New Year Gala was really funny. Did you guys watch that? It really made me laugh and made everybody laugh. Maybe we should rewatch it. It's just so funny. And also, every year, yes, they do have the same song, especially the ending song, which is called 难忘今宵, Unforgettable Night. They always play every single year, I think for 20, 30 years, or maybe even longer. And that just brings back the nostalgic feeling of so many years in the past. And people really embrace this concept in China overall, or everyone watching this program.
Would you say it's fair to say that Chinese New Year is really about family? Because you keep talking about family. All of your answers revolve around, getting something from your family or saying something to your family or going to your family's house. Would you say that it's fair to say that it's about revisiting family every year?
It's about revisiting families for sure. That is definitely the major part of it because now, with people working everywhere, so even within the same family, it's not so easy to all get together at the same time of the year. And because during Chinese New Year, everybody has a holiday. And like I mentioned, this year it's going to be 9 days. And you can't really find an excuse, not going back to hometown because of your work, for example, or some other reason. You always can make time for your family. Also, at the same time, it's a great time for you to reunite with some of your friends in the past, especially your hometown friends, because again, people now move around, they live anywhere, but because they always need to go back to visit their family, therefore it's also a wonderful time for, say, childhood friends to get together and celebrate together.
You know, China has some of the best transportation infrastructure in the world. 50,000 kilometers of high speed rail, domestic flights, airports everywhere, amazing highway infrastructure, EV cars. But this is also the largest migration of humans in the world every year. People, because you say everyone's going to their hometown. So, could you tell us a little bit about the difficulty that people face in making sure that they're able to get a train ticket or the traffic that they have to go through to get to, grandma's village?
Yes, that's quite crazy. Every year when the Chinese New Year happens, there is always gonna be news, like literally everywhere, talking about how people got stuck on the highway for 5, 8 hours without being able to get off the highway, and even some people started to do business like selling instant noodles, hot water on the highway because before you reach a service station, you don't find any of that, right? So some people just stuff their back truck with all of that. And also in terms of buying train tickets, definitely it's gonna be a lot more difficult than the normal times. And when it comes to like flight prices will drastically increase. So if you can afford it, you go with flight. But I think most people go with either cars or trains. And some people also get creative, right? Because maybe they're working from a different city and they all need to go back to the same hometown, even though they don't really know each other. They just started to post such requests on the internet, especially on Rednote, the Chinese social media, looking for a carpool. And if they're lucky, they can maybe even meet a new friend on the way back home. It's amazing.
That reminds me of a short story I read about China where there was an old couple. And this is just a story. I don't think it's true, but they didn't have any grandchildren or children. So they posted on social media, "Hey, we're looking to have someone over for to pretend sort of to be our family." And a college student in that city who couldn't get back home went to stay in their house. So it kind of reminds me of that, making new friends during a very special holiday. I want to switch gears a little bit. You are an influencer, and one of the things I see you doing, as someone who's used to live in the West, is you like to go online and talk about what foreigners misunderstand about China and then set them straight. So, could you tell us a little bit about why you want to correct some of the misunderstandings that foreigners have about China?
I think, I do not try to necessarily correct people. Rather, I try to provide more visibilities into people's everyday
Mm.
life here in China. And, I think the best way to, I guess, show people is by examples. That's why a lot of my videos are short form, singular micro examples about my everyday life, because I feel like this way people can actually be more relatable to the life here in China on a personal level rather than reading a long list of numbers, stats, right? And also, honestly, I think if I do not speak English or have no overseas experience, I maybe wouldn't really care about other people's misunderstanding. But because I am
Mm.
fortunate to be at this position and I have the ability to speak English, therefore, people do ask me about certain things in China. And many times it's just outright false information. So I do feel to have the responsibility to let people know what the reality is. And I think in this process, it's a mutual understanding, both for them to get to know Chinese culture better, and also for me to try to understand where are all those misunderstandings come from. So the next time when people ask me the same question, I can be at a better position to understand where they come from. So overall, maybe that's my goal. Like maybe going from someone from very false information about China, going complete denial or rejection when it comes to China topic, to maybe somewhere there is a possibility for me to hear more about what China side has to say, and eventually maybe even come here to see with themselves. Especially now, there are a lot of visa-free countries, like
Mm.
they can come to China from EU and Canada, UK recently. So that's what I'm trying to do here.
Mm. Can you tell us, what is one example of something that people misunderstand about China that you've tried to correct people? You said not correct. That you tried to provide more insight about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first one on top of my head is social credit score system, because this one I got asked just so many times, and I already made like two or three videos trying to tell people this thing does not exist. However, for some reason, people still believe we have such system. It's really funny because we Chinese people, most of us have never even heard of social credit system, and then someday just foreigners come in and tell us, oh, you guys have that. Do you know? We're like, no, we don't know. We live in this society. We don't even know that exists. I think on the internet, I also saw like a pretty extreme example by like there is a content creator trying to showcase such system doesn't really exist. So this person just started to say swear words in front of the CCTV camera, and as an example. However, still get people's comments by saying, oh, you know why in this case it doesn't really affect your quote unquote social score is because you're speaking it in English, not Chinese. I mean, if you really think we have such a massive surveillance system monitoring everybody, every single move, don't they have the ability to just translate English into Chinese? So yes, this is the biggest, I feel like, misconsumption from foreigners about China.
So you're saying there is no social credit system?
Absolutely no, sir.
Yeah, I've asked so many
Maybe,
Chinese people about this. Then no one has ever heard of it. I've no one. Everyone's like, "Do you mean my WeChat score or something like that?" Because maybe you forgot to pay your DD driver, for a month ago, and
yes,
your WeChat score can go down a little bit. But that's the only thing that anyone has, any idea about. Because there's no score that tracks like, "Oh, you jaywalked," or something, and now the
right.
ideas in the West are so crazy. Not even just like, oh, you have a score that goes down, but like when you get home to your home, you can't even go into your own home because you've been locked out of your home because you did something bad. And I have no one I'm talking to in China has any idea what they're talking about.
Exactly, exactly. I think, also like the thing that you just mentioned about being locked out of your own home because of this fabricated social score is crazy to me. And I think, like you said, the closest thing I can find is like the financial score, the one that you mentioned on WeChat or maybe on Alipay. That is our payment apps. And, if you pay back your credit card on time, if you rent your rental car undamaged on time, yeah, your scores will get a little bit higher. Then next time when you go rent a car, go rent a power bank, you don't need to pay deposit for it because you have very good uh, financial credit history. I think it's just the same thing as how the credit score works when you are
Mm-hmm.
using credit cards in the West. Really, the same thing.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. I think it's a really bizarre myth that's evolved in the West, so I'm kind of confused about that. Um, can you think of a single? Let's switch to you for a moment. You lived in the West. Could you tell us where you lived in the West?
I lived in Tennessee in USA and also Ontario in Canada.
So, let's talk about reverse culture shock, or your culture shock from going to North America. As a Chinese person, when you arrived in Tennessee in the first week or two, what kinds of things surprised you about American life?
I think it's the idea of enjoying the moment, right? So when I went there during my orientation week, I got to know people from everywhere, also people from America, and they just have parties like literally every single day. And over here in China, we do have parties, but we don't have crazy parties or we don't have parties every single day. Even during the orientation week here in China, there are no parties like every single day. But over there, it just the friends that I made literally asked me, "Yo, bro, you wanna go here or go there?" And once I'm out with them, it's literally jumping between houses on the street. You just bring your own drink. You don't even know those people. You just bring your own drink and walk in and have a party with them. This concept was very crazy back then to me as a student coming to
Mm.
America for the first time.
Well, you're reminding me of my youth when I was about 18 or 19 years old. That's what life was like for me, too. In fact, my house was the host of many parties at that time. So I didn't know more than half of the people in my house for most parties. More than half of the people in my own home, I had no idea who they were. They just showed up, and that was like normal. What about Ontario? What was life in Ontario like?
Ontario, I guess comparing to Tennessee, it's more multicultural because I was in the biggest city in Canada, Toronto, and they do have a lot of immigrants or people, workers, students from all over the world. So going to Toronto, Ontario, in the beginning, I felt like I'm a foreigner, but then I noticed everyone is speaking with a different accent. So it's very easy for me to be part of them. And this experience actually helped me to boost my confidence to speak confidently in front of other people because everybody is just learning this culture, learning English overall. And that is quite a big shock to me because I thought, everybody there would be speaking English natively, but not the case because, how multicultural Canada is in general.
Let's switch around. You introduce a lot of foreigners to life in China. What would you say a lot of the foreigners who are in your comments section, for example, what do they find surprising about their first period of time or coming to China at all?
Oh yeah, there are, I think, several things that really shocked my Western audiences, if that's your question. Um,
Yes.
for example, I showed people how active those Chinese aunties are. Every night they're out square dancing, and I shot videos. I also live streamed. People ask me, "Oh my God, what are people doing there? Is this some sort of a special occasion?" And I just tell them, "No, it's just another regular day. It happens every single night as long as it's not raining outside." And it's this like collective activity, social life, especially among people around that age group, is so common, but so uncommon in the West. And also, another thing that really shocked a lot of the foreigners is over here, Chinese people all take naps during lunch break. And when I post this on the internet, a lot of the people, especially from the West, tell me, "Oh my God, like I really need to move to China because I don't feel like, I'm as efficient." And but over here, very common. Like I would say 80, 90% of the people workforce take naps during lunch break, and that tend to shock foreigners as well.
Yeah, I want to take a nap during my lunch break. I really like the fact that when I moved here a long time ago, 13 years ago, I saw the older generation dancing all throughout Beijing, and then as I've traveled through all other cities, I've seen it everywhere. Every part of China, people love dancing. They love dancing at night, and especially the older generation love dancing. And actually, I wish this is something that we could do in my country, in the United States, because people would be healthier and people would be more social, and maybe they would even live longer, happier lives. So I think this is something that I hope that we can learn from China. I want to switch gears again. You live in Henan province. So I was hoping you could sell us what is cool about Henan province. What I know about it is the Shaolin Temple, the martial arts capital of the world is in Henan province. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely, sir. That's also the first thing that comes to my mind when I try to sell my province to people who have never been there. So Shaolin Temple is kind of the the birthplace where a lot of people who want to play kung fu go to. And indeed, over there, a lot of people practice kung fu, and that's also where a lot of the kung fu monks come from. I remember when I went as a kid, actually I see the practice area where they have like just holes on the ground, and how they get all those holes by like stepping down to the ground really hard when they practice kung fu, and that somehow becomes this scenic spot. It was not man, it was well, it's man-made, but it's not like artificially fabricated. It's like when people are practicing kung fu. They just made that to happen. And that's the first thing I want to sell. And second thing, this is, I guess, more relatable to me. And I'm very sure most of you guys will not have heard about what I'm going to say, which is my hometown, there is a supermarket that is so famous. It literally is viral in China because this supermarket is a local brand. It refused to expand nationwide because they just want to serve the people locally. And the philosophy behind the founder of the grocery store is they want to share, actually, and they did share over 90% of their benefits to the employees. So they have the top-notch quality of service and products. That's why, I know it's crazy to believe, right? Like why someone would travel to a city to do grocery, but hey, that's what's happening in my hometown. So that's definitely a second thing I want people to know. And by the way, the name of that brand is called Pang Donglai PDL, if you want to look up.
Well, that's really fascinating. I'm wondering if maybe other grocers can go there and learn from the style that they have to export the service techniques to other places. Because in the United States, I've noticed service has changed over the years, and they're always looking for ways to upgrade. Maybe that will happen here too. You point out and explain things that Westerners call strange, but are actually just common things in China. Why do you think that so many Western people have such strange ideas about what China is actually like?
I think there are several reasons why foreigners think China is strange, even our everyday behaviors. First of all, it comes from this long history of China. So we come from a very different cultural and philosophical perspective. For example, over here, we value more family values and collectivism, basically. Whereas in the West, people celebrate individualism. That's why you see a lot of the square dancing aunties, as we just have talked about. That's very common here in China, but not so common in the West. And also, I believe it's a lot of the times that people sort of get to know China from this media narrative that kind of filters China with ideological perspective and or ideological bias. So people maybe get to know China with not a so good impression to start with. And once people develop this idea, then it's just hard to change this cognitive rigidity, right? Like I'm not saying only foreigners have, I also have, I seek for more information that confirm my bias. And also the algorithm on the social media also plays a role in this. The more we see certain stuff, the more we'll see about the same thing again and again. So when people actually see the real life in China, which is very different from their usual belief, they find it very counterintuitive. So that's why they find it strange. Maybe they choose not to even believe in the reality of life here in China.
Yeah, I'm hoping, like you said before earlier in this discussion, that more people from all over the world can come to China and see what it's actually like, as opposed to the online debate about what China's really like. There's only so much people can say on a phone, but if you walk off of the airplane and look around and go to the hotel and eat the food and meet the people, I think almost 99.99% of people are going to have a very positive idea of what China is actually really like. So I think more people need to come to China to understand the daily reality. This is a blue sky and there's children playing at the park and grandpa's watching the kids while mom and dad go to work. Normal life like you would find anywhere in the world. What about you know what about people who've never been to the West? I want to kind of reverse it. Are there unusual ideas that Chinese people have about what life is like in America, for example, that you find interesting or that are a little bit bizarre?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are plenty. So I'll just give you a few examples. For example, Chinese people here, they always save for a rainy day, a potential rainy day in the future. So no matter how much money they make, they always try to have some savings. So maybe one day, when they get laid off or whatever, they can always sustain for some other period of time. Maybe it's gonna be 2 months or half a year. But regardless, everybody have savings. Whereas in the West, um, it's crazy to us that a lot of people they don't save anything at all. They just enjoy the moment, and maybe in some cases live paycheck by paycheck. So that is a very strange or bizarre thing that Chinese people think of foreigners. And also another one is this ice water. You know, Chinese people just love drinking warm or even hot water regardless of the season, even during summer. My parents always tell me warm water is good for your body because your body needs energy. And I think this is from the traditional Chinese medicine perspective. Whereas in the West, it seems iced water is everywhere, even in winter. At least when I was abroad, I go to a restaurant in winter, they serve me ice water. And the best I can ask for is room temperature water, so don't put ice in it. But asking for hot water in a restaurant seems to be such a strange thing. And this is another thing that Chinese people in general find Westerners pretty strange or bizarre.
I have the exact reverse impression. Like when I came to China, I was like, "Oh, can I have some ice water?" And they're like, "Why?" Or like, "We don't have that." So I had to get used to that water was going to come, hot most of the time. Or you even walk into like the doctor's office or the dentist office or something. They bring you a little paper cup full of water or tea that's so hot that I wouldn't be able to drink it unless I wait 2 or 3 minutes for it to cool down. But so it is definitely something that we do differently, and we have a different idea about that. My mom's refrigerator is one of those really, really big refrigerators. You can literally put your cup into it, like there's a hole, and ice just
Yeah.
pours into your cup like it does at 7-Eleven or something. So everyone loves ice in my country. I don't know about the health difference. Maybe you're right. Maybe Chinese culture is right that hot water is better for you, but I just love icy cold water. It doesn't matter the season. Huh. Okay.
Right.
What about your audiences? You post on different social media. So you post on
Right.
Xiaohongshu, or Red Note, which is basically a Chinese app, and most everyone on there is a Chinese person. There are some foreigners now using the app too and learning about China. I think that's wonderful. But you also post your content on TikTok, which is a westward-facing app, and most of the people on there are from Western countries. Do you find that there's a difference in your comments in terms of how they receive the same videos that you make for both platforms?
Yeah, absolutely. People have very different opinions or post really different comments on the same video coming from different cultural backgrounds, Chinese versus people from other countries. And the first thing I guess is because a lot of my content are indeed everyday life here in China, so Chinese people find my content just as regular as it is, because they also have this life, whereas foreigners find it very shocking. For example, like my breakfast routine, right? I have soup in the morning in my hometown, and a lot of foreigners say, "Oh my God, I never really have this idea of enjoying a cup of soup in the morning." Whereas Chinese people are like, "Yeah, like I also have soup, so what?" Like, so it's shocking versus not shocking, and also people come look at my video, watching my video from very different angles. So another example I can give is the other day I also made a video about my everyday lunch. And when foreigners see my lunch, they're like, "Oh my God, that looks so delicious. I cannot wait to China and eat this delicious food myself." Whereas when I get Chinese people's comments, it's usually like, I think you get scammed a little bit. You paid a little bit too much, my man. Like this thing should cost you 15. Why you paid 20 for it? So people come in looking at the same thing from very different angles, and it's just the same content shocks people versus not shocking another group of people at the same time. It's very intriguing for me to see different reactions.
That's an interesting point. You've mentioned in a previous interview that you go out almost every single meal. And in America, we can only go out 2 or 3 meals a week. Any more than that, and we consider it, we wouldn't be able to afford it, actually. I just put it that way. Most working class Americans have to eat at home some of the time because going out, even to fast food, is too expensive. What do you typically pay for one of the meals that you have when you go out?
Oh, yeah. So I do go and eat out quite often, and normally I pay around the range between 15 to like 20, give or take. So that's around 2 to 3 US dollars. And for anyone who has a job in China, I think it's pretty affordable. And also because right now, I'm just living by myself. So cooking for myself, the ROI is kind of low. I maybe cook for like 30 minutes and then I finish it because I'm a guy. So I do it pretty fast. I finish it in like 10 minutes. The ROI is really low. So I do go out and eat, and people, around my age also go out to eat every single day. It's just very common. And the only time when I cook maybe is during the weekend in the morning. If I really feel in the mood, I might make my own breakfast. But that's pretty much it.
So, $2 to $3 in America probably can't buy us anything. I'm not even. I don't think you can get a single hamburger just with no fries, no drink, nothing. Couldn't get the simplest hamburger or like the simplest thing at most places. I mean, even just one item. What can you get for $2 to $3 in China?
$2 to $3. Maybe I'll just give you the example of the noodle that I had last night. Last night I went to this Muslim noodle restaurant. I just love their noodles. I'm not Muslim myself, but I really love their food. And so my food cost me 20. It's stirred stir fried mushroom and beef with green onions, red onions, green peppers, red peppers, and onions as toppings. And then they also serve you this big plate of noodle, and it's actually a very large portion. I was very hungry. That's why, I mean, that's just another reason why I went there to eat. And then they serve you this plate of stir fried vegetables and meats, and then this big plate of noodle. You just sort of dump the vegetables on top of the noodle, mix it, and enjoy it yourself. And the thing is, actually, I live streamed when I was eating my noodle, and people coming in are always, "Oh my God, it looks delicious. Kenny, how much is it?" And I let them guess. They're like, maybe $8, $7, like because they know China is cheaper, but they cannot believe it's only $3.
Yeah, that is really fascinating. I think a lot of Americans will be jealous of the cost of living in China. You've also, according to your own videos, you've been accused of defending China. When you yourself like to say that you're not defending China, you're just showing what life is actually really like. Why do you think it is so many people refuse to understand what China is really like from your personal experience?
Right. I think, a lot of the foreigners get to know China from the news anchors, the big news outlets. And I find this more kind of permanent, maybe in the Western world, that a lot of the news anchors do look at China through a very um, ideological or a political framework. Therefore, they are very likely to, phrase China as somewhere pretty bad. And whenever, I mean, there are, some of the problems that we have, like I don't deny, but whenever there is a problem, it tend to be enlarged to the maximum scale. So they'll be saying like China, entire China is like this, right? So when people get to know China from this perspective, this tend to form their own understanding about China from a very negative perspective. And then people tend to have this cognitive rigidity. They just stick to what they already believe, and then confirmation bias comes in. The algorithm keeps feeding you what you already believe in, so more negative images about China. And then when you see the actual life in China, which I guess a lot of the Western media don't really show, um, they're like, "Oh my God, this is really different from what I saw on the news anchors. Like it must be like a singular case." So I think this is why. many Westerners refuse to understand China as it is, this cognitive rigidity and confirmation bias. I also have this problem. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, only people in the West have this. I also have this problem. But when it comes to like
Mhm.
trying to understand a country or a place or group of people, I do believe having more angles and, for example,
Mm.
me providing visibility into everyday people's life, help people to get to know this place better.
Well, let's talk about some misconceptions with people who have seen your content and then said, "Oh, wow, I learned something. That's not what I thought." What are some misconceptions that people that disappear quickly when people are shown real-world examples from your videos?
Um, from my videos, from my live streams, I think the things that, or the misconceptions that tend to be gone very fast are the following several. So I noticed, people always ask me, is China safe? Especially for people who have never been to China, maybe because of the news. They don't think China is a safe country. And I show them, I try to make videos in complete darkness in a valley or in a place where there's nobody, even without lights, right? I tell them, no problem, holding a phone, talking to the camera, no problem at all. And also, when I kind of live stream, I do show people. I think you might have the experience living in Beijing because we do have a lot of those food delivery guys during the lunch hour,
Mm.
dinner hour. They do deliver food everywhere in the city. And when these food delivery drivers, they get off their scooter, go get the food from the restaurant. A lot of them don't even pull out the keys from the scooter, right? Because
Yeah.
they might need to go get the other order and so on. I mean, if it's not safe, their scooter will be snatched in no time, right? So that's safety. And also another one I want to mention is homeless people. People often ask me, "Hey Kenny, are there homeless people?" And I also make videos talking about homeless people. There's no homeless people at all because there is poverty alleviation program or policy several years back. But now, especially when I live stream, when people ask me this question, I'll just tell them, hey, you guys take a look by yourself. Are there homeless people? If you can't find a homeless people, actually, I'm gonna give you like $10, because I'm confident that you won't be able to find any. And people see my videos, see my live streams, such misconceptions tend to be gone very quickly.
I had a similar discussion with someone, and I think in this particular person's case, they were being dishonest. They said, "Oh, I said there's very few homeless people in Beijing. Maybe there's one or two or three that I've seen in the last few years." And someone said, "Oh, there's lots of homeless people in Beijing. I used to live there." So I said, "Okay, great. I'll give you $100. You send me the location, the name of the street, and I will go live stream there for 10 minutes straight, walk the entire area that you're talking about. If we can find one homeless person, I'll send you $100." They didn't answer back. So I think a lot of people, they actually don't think these things are true. They just want to deceive others, which is really frustrating for me because a lot of people don't want an honest take of China. They want to fool other people into thinking that it's bad, which really frustrates me because, I think I do try to do a lot of what you do. Because as an American, I came to China. I didn't have a lot of ideas about what China was like. And this wasn't a problem in 2012. People really just didn't know anything about China. And so I came to China with no idea of what it was going to be like. Around 2016, 2017, a lot of Western media began to say a lot of strange things about what China's like. And so the reason I got into social media was similar to what you do. I just wanted to show people, well, this is what China is actually really like. And what's frustrating to me is a lot of people in the West, some of them at least, like you said, are like, oh, that's interesting. Now I've learned something new. And other people just refuse to change their opinion no matter how much evidence that we show them. I think that's a little strange. What about when you're posting on Xiaohongshu versus posting on TikTok? What do Chinese audiences tend to focus on in your work that Westerners ignore or don't notice?
I think there are indeed different focuses when it comes to the Chinese audience paying attention to my video, where Western audiences might ignore. For example, You know, I, um, I try to show the high-speed train in China, and it's a great accomplishment as a country. Nowadays, you can go from Shanghai to Beijing or vice versa in like 4 hours. I mean, that's crazy. You know, if even if you take a flight, it takes like I think a little bit over 2 hours, right? So, and
Mm.
then you know, we Chinese audience usually focus on such a achievement from the collective mindset because in the past China was really really poor. We don't even have like good infrastructure. We don't have pretty much no infrastructures, right? Even the roads are bumpy, holes everywhere. So in order to go from nothing to something, right? That's what we try to focus on during the first phase. And then I feel like some of the Westerners, they might be focusing on, hey, maybe there is one or two or three people who don't really want to move because of the country is trying to build a railway, you know, right through their village. So people might say, oh, you know, forced relocation. But over for the Chinese audience, they try to focus on the greater good because once this railway system is built, millions, right, or even hundreds of millions people's life will be drastically improved. They have better access to cities, medical resources, schools, and so on. And then it seems like a Western audience or some of the Western audience, I'm sorry, some of the Western audience may only focus on the, you know, very small things. And also, I think another thing is when I live stream, for example, I get this question a lot, which is they ask, oh, you know, I go to China, why Chinese people don't speak English? You know, anywhere else people speak English. Um, I mean, this coming from a Chinese audience perspective, Chinese audience usually explain this way. Like sometimes I don't even need to explain. They just tell the foreigners asking these questions. Well, because China doesn't really have any colonization history, so you can't really expect people over here to speak a foreign language because everybody will just be speaking Chinese to each other. And also because of you know what we have talked about the biases from a lot of the foreigners. Therefore, in the past, a lot of them are not even traveling here. So we don't really have a lot of opportunities to use English. And now, as there are more and more interests from the Western tourists coming to China, more and more people start, especially in the service industry, start to speak English better than in the past. So, yeah, those are the stories or the things I want to mention about how Chinese audience tend to be more aware of whereas Western audiences might tend to ignore.
Well, I want to go back to your mentioning about the villages sometimes that need to give up land for major infrastructure projects because that happened to my grandpa in California, my grandfather. So in California, he lived in a town called Empire, and it's near Modesto, California. It's no one knows where this is. It's a small town. And there was a railroad, the train that needed to go through there. So they took more than half of my grandfather's land and everyone in the entire town. So in Empire, where the train was going through, like I don't even know, maybe 100 people's land, they took more than half of the land away and built a railroad there. And they created permanent poverty in that area because all these people were people who raised cattle, cows and horses and things, and they lost their pastures, the land that they used to raise those animals. And so this town Empire became one of the poorest towns in California because the railroad ran through it. So, what's happening in China or what's happening in India or what's happening in the United States in terms of the need for infrastructure is the same. If you need to build a hydropower facility in China or in the United States, land sometimes needs to be given up. Sometimes people are given land somewhere else or they're paid by the government to give that land up. So I don't think there's anything special going on in China in these terms because my own family has personally experienced what that's like. But okay, let's talk about there are a lot of people in the West. I think most people want to understand the way China really is. That most people are not bad actors. they actually do want to know what China's really like. So, in your opinion, what can well-meaning people do if they genuinely want to understand what China is really like?
Well, I think for people who actually are genuinely wanting to know China, they are already doing what they should be doing, which is listening to your podcast or watching your video, maybe watching my video or live stream as well in the future. And so definitely that's one window where you can ask questions to better understand China, especially right straight from a Chinese person or someone living in China. And the second one is, when you ask questions, I think people really should come from equal positions, both people asking the questions and people answering the questions, right? Because we're just trying to uh, answer the other person's question. Like, it's not like I am at a higher position looking down upon you or try to impose values on you, because honestly, there will be a lot of differences. Some of the differences you might not even like when you hear about it. However, behind all the facts, there are always reasons why it is the way it is. So whether you like it or not, it's just the way it is, how it's operated in this foreign country, in this foreign town, in this case, China. So I think people need to be open-minded about it. Even for me, for example, when I answer questions, and maybe people don't really take my answer, and I accept that. Just be open-minded, because we are just trying to communicate, trying to understand each other better. Maybe because of my explanation is not good, or maybe due to my limited language English vocabularies, I didn't make it clear. But regardless of the reason, just be open-minded. And the last one is the best way to get to know China is obviously travel to China. See with your own eyes, because everything you see on the internet, regardless whether it's an article or video or whatever form of content it is, a lot of times you cannot tell whether that's subjective information or objective information. Only when you compare, see with your own eyes, you can form a true opinion about this country or this group of people. And then I think that will be the most realistic opinion for a person to have.
Those are really excellent viewpoints and excellent pieces of advice. I just want to point out to people you can follow Kenny on TikTok at Real KennyWow. Or if you want to join the Red Note community, you can download Xiaohongshu or Red Note in the West, put it on your own phone, and you can talk to Kenny at KennyWow and hundreds of other Chinese content makers as well, and get their videos and their insights into what China is really like. I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, because the kinds of insights that you share with the world are exactly the kinds of things that I think that the world needs. Thank you so much for your time, Kenny.
Thank you very much, Jason, for all the wonderful questions. Thank you very much.